Drivers 1, 2 and 3 shunted together a freight train in an intermodal yard. The train comprised 2 locomotives, 30 wagons, for 1,500 tonnes. The train was more than 500 metres in length. Driver 3 drove a motor vehicle to the level crossing to activate it, while Driver 1 in the lead locomotive and Driver 2 in the trailing locomotive departed from the yard to arrive in the crossing loop. Once the freight train was clear of the crossing loop, Driver 3 advised Driver 1 via radio, and the train was brought to a stop. At this point, Driver 3 should have applied handbrakes to the rear wagons and exhausted all remaining air from the train's brake pipe before the locomotives were uncoupled from the train's wagons. Driver 3 should then have waited for the locomotives to run around the wagons so he could couple the locomotives to the other end for the required direction of travel. Driver 3 did not do this and instead drove the motor vehicle back to the intermodal yard without advising Driver 1 or 2. Driver 2 asked Driver 1 via radio if a full-service brake application had been made and if it was safe to uncouple. Driver 1 responded that a full-service brake application had been made, despite having only made a minimum brake application at that point. It was only now that Driver 1 commenced a full-service brake application on the train's wagons. Driver 2 closed the air cocks on the lead wagon and trailing locomotive prior to the full service having enough time to take effect. Driver 2 assumed that Driver 3 had applied the required number of handbrakes to the rear wagons and had exhausted all remaining air from the train's brake pipe. Driver 2 did not make any attempt to confirm this and proceeded to uncouple the locomotives from the wagons. Driver 2 returned to the cab of the trailing locomotive, and Driver 1 drove the locomotives to the end of the crossing loop. Without adequate brakes applied, the wagons began rolling away uncontrolled for over 1.5 kilometres, including over a protected level crossing. The train's wagons rolled all the way back to the intermodal yard, where it was seen by Driver 3, who ran to the first wagon and applied the handbrake forcefully. The train's wagons came to a stop less than 50 metres from a main road. The investigation into this incident found that Driver 1 was negligent in not having completed a full-service brake application despite informing Driver 2 that it had been done, resulting in Driver 2 closing the air cocks on the lead wagon and locomotive prior to the full-service brake application taking effect. Driver 2 was negligent in uncoupling the locomotives from the train's wagons without knowing or receiving confirmation that they had been correctly secured. Driver 3 was negligent in breaking protocol and leaving the operational area, failing to apply handbrakes to the rear wagons, and failing to exhaust all air from the train's brake pipe. Drivers 1, 2 and 3 were all negligent in assuming the train's wagons would be correctly secured prior to the locomotives being uncoupled from the train's wagons, and by their failure to communicate and verify this. The outcome of this incident could have been catastrophic. The uncontrolled train passed through a level crossing. The train also stopped less than 50 metres short of a major road, narrowly avoiding potentially tragic consequences. The breaches in this incident are an example of shortcuts being taken by individuals and represent blatant breaches of protocol. Under Section 56 of the Rail Safety National Law, individuals, not just organisations, can face prosecution for negligence if they breach rail safety regulations. Protocols in relation to correctly securing rolling stock to prevent unauthorised movements are fundamental to rail safety and must always be followed.